New at 6, homes and properties are disappearing in New Buffalo before their owners' very eyes.
Beach erosion has reached dangerous levels. WSBT 22's Caitlin Connon is here. And Caitlin, there are questions about what's causing that erosion.
Todd, we've reported extensively on high water levels in Lake Michigan and how that can damage beaches and bluffs. But people in New Buffalo say the erosion they're seeing is from more than that. They say the harbor is the problem. These members of the New Buffalo Shoreline Alliance have owned homes and lived along Lake Michigan for decades. They have so many stories, too many to count, of spending time with friends and family.
There was all this fellowship all the time. There was great fun every week and each week, and there was, a different group here that was enjoying themselves.
Now that's all gone. It slipped away as the sand slipped into the lake.
The lake is relentless in attacking what used to be the beach and now the bluffs.
And these men are paying the price to protect themselves from that fury. Warwick Shores neighborhood has spent millions to install revetments.
The whole community has got fresh rocks, I'll call it, this year.
And even that isn't always enough to ease all fears.
When you lay down in bed at night and the bed shakes from the water hitting the shoreline, you go, what's the next play? What's going to happen next? How much is it going to cost? Or worse, am I going to have a house?
Losing a home is a legitimate concern. 9 have gone into Lake Michigan in recent years, including the one right next to Ed Oldis's home. That raises environmental concerns and reduces the city's property tax base. Berrien County Commissioner Ezra Scott says that's not the only money New Buffalo stands to lose if erosion continues the way it is.
People aren't going to come here to spend a vacation to put a chair on a bunch of rocks. It's not going to happen.
Between restaurants, shops, and rentals, New Buffalo's tourism industry, really its only industry, will suffer.
It's not about only us on the beach. It's about what the beaches produce for everybody.
So is it just high water? Oldis says it's more than that.
The people responsible for the loss of beach are the United States Army Corps of Engineers.
The Army Corps built this harbor in 1975. The feasibility study laid out plans to mitigate erosion, first with 2 stockpiles of sand south of the breakwall, then with periodic dredging of sand from the harbor to replace those stockpiles. That sand was expected to flow down the shoreline and feed southern beaches. The plan was supposed to last 50 years, but Harry Salisbury with the Corps says that was simply an analysis period.
I wouldn't necessarily say it was a contract that we had, that we were committing to dredge for 50 years and then stop.
Others disagree. When he asked the Corps to include $2.4 million in its budget for beach nourishment, Representative Fred Upton says it was because the Corps stopped short of the 50-year commitment and amount of material called for. But Salisbury says the Corps is still doing mitigation depending on channel conditions and subject to availability of funding provided by Congress. The New Buffalo Shoreline Alliance says one solution would be to dredge New Buffalo Harbor and use that sand to prevent erosion. Salisbury says the last time the channel was dredged was in 2018. Upton says the last time the channel was dredged before that was 2013. He's requested the Corps dredge as often as every 1 to 2 years. Salisbury says it does when it can.
We cannot dredge the harbor unless we are funded to do so.
Salisbury couldn't give me a clear answer on whether Upton's funding request would be granted, which leaves these men in a bit of a quandary. They worry they'll need even more sand than the original plan called for to fix the problem.
I think this summer is going to be a little bit of a tougher summer for this town because there's not a real reason to be here.
The New Buffalo Shoreline Alliance and Commissioner Scott, along with many others, are trying to get a state disaster declaration for beach erosion. That would help New Buffalo get assistance from FEMA. Unfortunately, disaster declarations don't currently have a mechanism in place to handle shoreline erosion.
And now the Army Corps is doing something to address the erosion.
Yeah, Salisbury says the Corps is doing a study to see if the harbor is causing erosion and what sort of mitigation strategies could be used to combat that erosion. And he says that we should have an answer by the end of next month on whether there's federal interest in carrying out any of those measures.
Pretty incredible. All right, Caitlin, thank you.
Thanks, Dean.
An entire public beach in Berrien County no longer exists.
Now, officials have had to close Lincoln Township Beach after 100 feet of beach just disappeared. WSBT 22's Brooke O'Daniel is live in Stevensville. And Brooke, not only did the beach vanish, but the parking lot as well.
I'm standing in what's left of that parking lot here at Lincoln Township Beach. Now, officials actually put big logs here along the edge to try and prevent anyone from accidentally driving over that cliff. But now, since 3/4 of the parking lot has been eroded, they actually decided to lock up the entire park altogether.
We come and look at the lake probably almost every day. It's kind of like our happy place.
Just a few months ago, this beach was being enjoyed by residents. Now there's a gate keeping people out due to safety concerns.
It's really sad. Every year we go there in the summer, and you know, my mom grew up going to the chalets on the lake there, and so just to see that it's gone is devastating.
Lincoln Township Beach was the last public beach left in Stevensville. The other beach on Glenlord Road was turned into a lookout point many years ago, and now that spot is in jeopardy as well.
And they just started redoing this park too because, you know, erosion had already been a problem here, so I'm almost concerned at this point that this new structure is going to be in the water soon.
Lincoln Township officials say that Glenlord Park will be kept safe with an extension of the revetment wall. But as for Lincoln Township Beach, they aren't sure if it will ever reopen.
It's heartbreaking to see your township impacted this way. You know, from a standpoint of the residents having, really losing the opportunity to go to the beach, it's depressing.
As erosion continues to hit communities along the Lake Michigan shoreline, those who live nearby are concerned about the future.
When I was driving on Lakeshore Drive here, I was thinking, will my kids even have Lakeshore Drive at this point when they're growing up? So yeah, I was just thinking about that. It's very sad.
So what's the plan for the beach here? Well, officials tell me hopefully those lake levels go back down, and then maybe they can figure out some type of plan for the future. Live in Lincoln Township, Brooke O'Daniel, WSBT 22 News.
New at 6, dreams are literally being swept away as erosion causes destruction along the Lake Michigan shoreline.
That's right. Beaches, roads, even houses are falling into the bluff, and homeowners are really scrambling to find solutions. WSBT 22's Brooke O'Daniel is here in the studio with us tonight. Brooke, erosion isn't just a problem for these people who are losing their homes.
Erosion will end up impacting everyone that lives in a village or city where property is destroyed. These areas are losing thousands of dollars in tax revenue because once that land is lost, the city or county can no longer collect taxes from that property. Joan and Bruce Smothers fell in love with this property the moment they saw it 15 years ago.
When I came and I saw that view, it took my breath away. And I knew right that minute that I wanted to be on the lake.
As recently as a few months ago, they were enjoying the sunset and hosting parties for friends.
It's surreal. I mean, you can't even imagine that 4 weeks ago there were 50 people and you had a wedding here and then it's all gone.
The land in front of their home began to disappear in November. By Christmas, their decks had fallen into the bluff.
Totally shocking. No one, I guess, could have predicted this.
The couple was stunned to learn that their home insurance wouldn't help cover the cost.
You know, if the house had burned down or if a tornado had come through, it would have been covered. It's not covered for this.
Joan says a standard seawall wouldn't even protect their land and would be a more than $500,000 investment, money they don't have to spend.
You'd almost have to put up a 30-foot wall, and then you're kind of defeating the whole purpose of having a lake view. Not to mention who can afford to do that.
Unable to move their home, the couple had to make the heart-wrenching decision to get a demolition permit to demolish it.
We felt like the decision was made for us, that's our only choice.
A decision that means they lose a house that appraised for more than $1.5 million 6 months ago and will cost them additional funds to tear down.
It will cost probably around $10,000 to demolish it and take it away. If it fell in and went into the water, it would be well over $100,000.
They aren't the only ones dealing with this issue, and if the water levels continue to rise, it's going to impact even more people along the coast.
A pity, you know.
Dick Stauffer with Lincoln Township says it's not just homeowners that are going to be impacted. Each time property disappears or a home loses value, Everyone in the township will feel the loss.
When a home is demolished, of course, it's removed from the tax rolls.
Those tax dollars impact everyone.
Not only does the county lose, but the schools lose, all the villages lose.
Lincoln Township Assessor John Bauman is concerned about erosion's effect on the entire community.
We're already short on tax dollars as it is, so getting less and less of that because of houses going in or property values declining affects, the things that we can supply our citizens.
This problem happened 30 years ago in the 80s. But each storm that moves through seems to pack a more powerful punch than the last one.
It's like 1,000 freight trains hitting the beach every day on a big storm.
With some areas losing more than 60 feet just in the last few months, Dean Ray says his office has been extremely busy with requests.
I see 30, 40 semis with rocks go by every day. They're coming from Wisconsin, most of them, some Indiana, to build revetments.
Couples like the Smothers aren't sure what retirement will look like now.
As it either pushes it off or it makes it different. We still have a mortgage on this house. The mortgage doesn't go away because the house went away.
And while it's them suffering today, eventually it will be everyone.
The value of this home and a lot of other people's homes have gone down a good 50 to 75%. When that happens, the tax base drops. You don't have money for schools, you don't have money for roads.
The couple says their home will most likely be torn down in the next 3 weeks, and Joan told me she's not even going to be able to watch it happen.
Wow. And you're right, this does affect everybody eventually. There's the emotional loss, and I can't imagine the financial loss.
That financial loss is very difficult for them, but Joan told me it's going to be even harder to watch her husband's hard work of renovating that home be torn down in a single day.
It does affect so many people. No winners here, obviously.
None.
All right, Brooke, thank you. Watching a dream home being torn down piece by piece. This house was worth more than $1.5 million just 6 months ago.
But crews started demolishing it. Why? Because of lakeshore erosion. WSBT 22's Brooke O'Daniel is live on Notre Dame Avenue in Stevensville. And Brooke, the owners said tearing down the home was their only option.
This area looks a lot different than it did just 7 hours ago. Behind me 7 hours ago was a more than $1 million home. Now it's just been reduced to a pile of rubble. Let's take a look from above with WSBT's Drone 22. As you can see where this house met the shore of Lake Michigan. Originally, when they purchased this house, this view right here was a great view of the lake. But eventually that bluff started to disappear over the last couple of months, eventually taking part of the foundation with it. That sound is what's left of the first floor being smashed into the basement.
You can only do what you can do, and Mother Nature's going to do what she's going to do.
Bruce Smothers renovated this home 15 years ago. He says November storms turned their dream home into a nightmare.
I was cleaning up some stuff and I went to lunch and came back. I lost about 10 feet that afternoon.
The home began falling into Lake Michigan, and after considering all of their options, the couple had no choice but to tear it down.
But at the end of the day, it all boils down to money. I still couldn't afford to fix the beach. That's $480,000. You're not going to get that back on resale.
The excavator, John Pike, says this is the saddest project he's ever worked on.
Unfortunately, we're tearing down a house that I thought was the wrong address when I first showed up.
But he says with all of the erosion taking place along the shoreline, demolishing nice homes like this could become more common.
Our phone's ringing off the hook for retainment, and I've already looked at a few that if they don't do something fast, this is going to be the case.
Smothers had to get a number of permits for this demolition to be possible. After this is done, he's still going to have to pay for a house that no longer exists.
Oh yes, we have a substantial mortgage on it. The bank owns more of the house than I do.
Their property goes back for 5 acres, but Smothers says he'll never build on this property again.
Because eventually it's going to be creeping back for, I don't know, quarter mile, half mile, I have no idea. So even if you build down there, all you're doing is buying time.
So why did they have to demolish the house? Smothers tells me that if the house had fallen into the lake, it would have been more than $100,000 for the cleanup. Whereas today's demolition only cost around $10,000 and was safer for the environment. Live in Stevensville, Brooke O'Daniel, WSBT 22 News.
New at 5, a new round in the fight to stop erosion along Lake Michigan. After weeks of work, a revetment wall is now guarding the shore at the popular Glenlord Park.
It may look like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, but this is actually from erosion. And below this bluff that I'm standing on is a revetment that has been built so the rest of the erosion doesn't threaten the park.
There used to be 30 feet out here, gone.
Dick Stauffer is the Lincoln Township supervisor. He says Glenlord Park has been hit hard by erosion.
This is one of our deer parks that's been here for many years. It was challenged with lake erosion, as you can readily see. The erosion is so bad because the lake is so high.
Stauffer says the erosion has been particularly bad this year because of windstorms and other severe weather.
If there were a home here, it would have ruined this property. You can see how close it is here.
And a home was destroyed just a month ago in Lincoln Township when the back patio started to fall down the hill. Now this bluff overlooking the water at Glenlord Park has a revetment made out of rocks to keep the erosion from getting worse and the park from falling into the lake.
It was nip and tuck to save the park here. You can see how close we are here, that we got the rocks in on time.
He says this revetment should keep the park safe now for years to come.
We're happy to see this done. This park will be here now for eons, we hope, and for future residents and current residents to enjoy.
In Lincoln Township, I'm Bree Isom, WSBT 22 News.
Something that has not been seen for decades is visible again in St. Joseph. New at 5, significant lakeshore erosion is exposing what looks like a car graveyard. Look at this, all below the bluff. WSBT 22's Caroline Torrey is live in St. Joseph tonight. Caroline, that wreckage was intended to act as shoreline protection decades ago.
Jennifer, in this lookout park along Lakeshore Drive, it's especially hard to see what's below, especially with all this rain that we're getting here. But you could be surprised, there's some history down below the bluff.
A nice day in St. Joseph means people are out and about, visiting local stores or driving around town. Some cars that used to see these streets have been sitting at the bottom of the bluff in South St. Joseph since the late 1960s. St. Joseph resident Nathan Vojtovic remembers the area as a hangout spot for high schoolers.
That was kind of the thing before the erosion got worse, was people would go down there.
He forgot what was far below until people on social media recently started asking about it.
That's when I decided to get a drone up and get an up close view of it.
St. Joseph City Manager John Hodgson remembers seeing the cars years ago.
I haven't seen the cars personally, except when I was young in the 1970s, fishing, looking into the shoreline. They were very conspicuous.
But how did they get there? Homes used to sit where this overlook is now. According to a 1967 Herald Press article, a homeowner sent about a dozen junked autos careening toward the water's edge in hopes of building a barrier between the waves and his back door.
People were desperate. They were losing homes, they were losing the bluff, and they, out of options, they decided to throw debris.
Vojtovic says that debris is history, representing the fight against Lake Michigan that continues today.
It is pretty cool to see how bad it was at one point, because they were facing similar problems long time ago.
Even with the interesting story and resting place, he hopes something can be done to ensure the junk isn't swept into the lake.
Whatever's down there, it's definitely not good for the lake. So hopefully they come to address it after, seeing the recent footage and seeing how much of it's actually exposed now.
Hodgson says at this point the city doesn't have any plans to address the wreckage below the bluff here. And also Vojtovic says if you're curious about the car wreckage, do not head down the steep hill because it's dangerous, but check it out via drone video instead. Live here in rainy St. Joseph, I'm Caroline Torrey, WSBT 22 News.